What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TWA Motorsports, and today, check out what is in the shop. It is my dad's truck back from paint. If you guys did not know, it has been in paint for about 3 months, and I do think I talked about it in a couple videos. As a matter of fact, when we did the pinion seal on this thing quite a while back, we noticed there was some rust in the rocker. I think that kind of spurred him on to get this thing fixed, repainted, and so we're going to be doing some more updates to it as well. Since it's got new paint, it's time for a freshen up. He bought this thing new in 2000, well, didn't buy it new, sorry, take that back. He bought it in 2001. It is a 2001 model, but it had like 7,000 miles. So it was almost new when he bought it, and he drives it every single day. I think it's got over 300,000 miles on it now. And look, guys, that's the whole reason I wanted a green truck. I tried to buy this truck. I wanted this one, but he didn't want to sell it. I get it. And now he's at the point where he wants to make it look nice. It is his daily driver, so he's been driving his SSR every day, which I know he doesn't want to do. But anyway, back from paint, been gone 3 months. I've told you guys, like I said in a couple videos, where I've got parts scattered around the shop for it that we've been holding, waiting on this time. And so we're gonna do some stuff here, and then he's gonna take it back to his house and finish up the rest. But to start with, I'm gonna go on a little bit of a rant here, and the rant is gonna be on the paint job. He did not use the guy that I use for all of my stuff. I have one guy that I use for everything I do. He's pretty backed up and he's tough to get into. And so I think that's part of the reason that my dad chose to, find another option, is he didn't want to wait forever. Although this guy told him it was going to be 3 weeks, it took 3 months. Like I said, that's normal for a body shop. But my rant isn't so much with the paint, because I think he probably used quality paint and quality product. My rant is with the finish work. So a lot of detail in paint is how you finish it out. So the wet sanding and getting the junk out, the orange peel. And so that is where we're at right now, guys. It has a ton of orange peel, has quite a bit of dirt in the paint. And so while I've had a buddy of mine who does some paint work look at it and said, look, it's gonna flatten out and look like this, which is, that makes me and him feel a lot better. I'm sure more him than me, since it's his truck. I've got my painter coming out to take a look at it, seeing what he thinks. And so whether my dad sands it himself, like wet sands it and buffs it himself, or hire somebody to do it. My dad's a pretty talented guy, so I think he can do it. It's just, it's frustrating because it's probably 40 hours, maybe longer, of work fixing this, and it should have came out that way. But anyway, I'm gonna try to stop there. I'm gonna show you guys a couple spots that I don't like, that really frustrates me about this too. But for now, let's talk about what we're going to do in this video, because I think it's going to be a pretty long one. So he doesn't want a lowered one. He drives it every day. He uses it to pull a mower. He uses it as a truck. And so I know for a fact, I finally talked him into at least dropping the back down 2 inches. We're going to be doing some suspension work in the front, which we'll talk about in a second, but I'm going to trim a half a hoop off the front spring so we get it down maybe about a ½ inch in the front, so it'll be a nice looking stance. The other thing, guys, and I've been after him for years about this, especially when he needed new tires, we got to get rid of these old school 16-inch Eagle wheels. I hate them, and they were probably pretty cool in 2001. I don't think they were cool then, but they got to go. And so he finally bought a set of 20-inch wheels. It's going to look so good just with that and the drop. It's going to look incredible. So other than that, he bought new headlights, new tail lights, new third brake light from GM. I actually bought some parts for that Stepside that I had a while back, new caps for this, new steps. He's going to be putting those on. He got some new mirrors. He did decide to just go with the textured black mirrors because he does drive it and he didn't want to deal with the bugs on them. He got a new GM front bumper cap. Also, he didn't paint the cap like mine. I think he's going to be using the valance off of my Yukon. Remember, we just put that lip on the Yukon, so I had to upgrade to a different valance. He's going to use that, so it's going to have fog lights now. He didn't have that before. Let's see what else. All the suspension stuff we're going to be replacing. Like I said, the headlights, bulbs. He's going to do a power stop brake kit like I did on my truck. So when we tear all the suspension apart, when we go back together, I'm going to leave the rotor off and just hang the caliper. He's going to come out and paint the calipers black, make those look really nice. It's going to clean up and be a really good looking truck. It's just, like I said, I'm back to the rant again. I'm frustrated about the orange peel and the amount of work that he's going to have to do to get it to what he wants. It should have came out that way. But either way, every single box right there in that corner, guys, so from those rusty rotors, from there over, it's all stuff for this truck. So we got new upper and lower A-arms, so he's gonna get new ball joints, new tie rod ends, like I said, all new lights. You can see TYC, my brand, the brand I choose if we're doing stock replacement. I will list every single thing that we are using on this truck in the description down below. You can see the brake rotors. Yeah, that's about it. The drop spindles are actually for the Yukon, guys. No, I have not done that yet. But all this stuff's gonna go on there. It's gonna get a better looking stance. It's definitely gonna look better in the back. It's definitely gonna look better with the wheels. So let's get started. I probably am not gonna get this all in one video. I'll probably, because we'll do the stuff that we need to do, and then he's gonna take it home, finish up, whether he has somebody fix the paint or he does it himself. We'll probably do an update video later, because I told him, you know, I don't really want to snap these brand new pieces on if you're going to be paint correcting and get them all nasty. Same way with this piece up here. So I think for the most part, we'll get to see the wheels, the bumpers, the better stance in this video. But one other thing before I start tearing stuff down, one of the things I really don't like that they did here was my dad had this top faded and he had a local guy just respray it to make it look a little nicer. The guy did a terrible job. It started to chip. Well, they didn't feather that out like around this light. They took this light out, but they didn't feather it out, so you can still see the chip. They just painted over it. So it's frustrating because, you know, how long is that gonna last? The other thing is, same thing here. They took the glass out, but they didn't, like, there was a chip here, and I don't know if you can see it, but they just painted over it. So I'm hoping that there's enough on the roof that we can get it, or he can get it flattened out. There's also a couple dings they should have taken care of up there. Just frustrating stuff like that. Like, did you think that we weren't gonna get up on the top and see that? They did spray a little bit of a bed liner in it from PPG. Looks okay. You know, it's darker in some areas. I don't know if that'll, you know, when it hits the sun, if maybe it'll flatten out a little bit and look a little nicer, but either way. Okay, so I'm done with my rant. Let's get this thing off the ground, get these nasty wheels off, and start pulling some suspension loose. Got it off the ground, supported by jack stands. Guys, these old school wheels like this, sometimes they're a pain to take off. And the reason why is, like, this is really, really close. So, like, you have to use a pretty thin wall socket. I'm not using an impact socket, I'm using a thin wall. But sometimes I've had to, like, scavenge into some junk, like cheap, maybe give me tools, like Christmas tools I call them, to get something that'll fit in these holes. So luckily we'll be doing away with that. Anyway, let's get the wheels off. I'll get them off on both sides, and I'll probably do like normal, guys. I'll only show you one side. With the miles this thing has, I know it's got to need ball joints. I know that the tie rods are probably toast. And so just so you guys know, the wheels are sold. My dad traded them for something. But let's get some of this suspension apart. We're not upgrading anything other than, I guess, the tie rod, the brakes, upper and lower arms. I may have talked him into getting some new bushings for his sway bar, but I think the shocks are fine if we can get them off without breaking them, because we got to get all this stuff out in order to get just to the spring, which the spring's got to come out anyway because the lower A-arm is going to be out. So let me go whip this other wheel off, because I'm going to go back and forth, and then we'll start with the brake. Well, guys, unfortunately, a few things have changed. I started this video about a week ago. Since then, my dad had the guy who painted my truck over there come out and look at the paint job on this, and he didn't have a lot of good stuff to say either. So here's kind of the plan right now. We're going to go ahead and knock the suspension out. So I'm going to get all that done, but my painter is actually going to try to sand this down and see if he can make it look better. And because of that, we're not going to snap on any of the plastics. So I think we're going to wait on like the headlights, the taillights, obviously the plastics on the front bumper, and the plastics on the bed and whatnot, just because you guys know when you're slinging compound, it gets in that, in those pieces of plastic, especially those texture pieces, and it's just a pain. So there's no sense in doing that. But what I will show you in this video is we'll get all the suspension knocked out. hopefully this thing back on the ground, and then he's gonna take it out, let the painter, my painter, actually fix the issues that we have, and then I'll probably make a separate video when we do the rest of the install. But either way, we're still gonna get into it. Let's go ahead and knock these brakes off, get the suspension apart. I'll show you guys kind of step by step on what I'm gonna be doing. And yeah, so I just wanted to give you a kind of an update. If you're trying to figure out what was going on later on in the video, that's what's up. Let's start by getting this line out of the way. So I'm just pinching that to pull it out of the little holder. Then we're gonna go on, unsnap this one. There's one up top here. I don't know which way it's gonna go actually. And then we'll get this unplugged. And then I'm gonna use my little tool here to pull it out. If you have these tools, guys, it comes in handy because you don't break a bunch of stuff. That's his actual light. Probably need to zip tie some of this stuff up actually, since he's driving with no inner fenders. But now that we've got that, let's go grab a 10mm and we'll get the brake line off here and then released from up top. Somebody has put something different in here in the past, but these should be 10mm. I don't know what this size is. Looks a little bit bigger. And I always just move this out of the way if you can, and then put this back in place so we know where it's at. Let me go see if I can figure out what size this is. It ended up being an 11. Like I said, I don't know what the deal is here. I feel like I'm the only one that's ever worked on this truck. We put brakes on it one time, but I don't remember that. Same situation here. I'm gonna put this back in place. Maybe. And then we're gonna move on to the brake, which we're gonna need a Torx bit. I absolutely hate the way these are designed, but a Torx is what it's gonna take. And I'm gonna move it over so we can get a little better access to it. Now I have ordered some new ones here, just because these are stripped, but this is a T55. And a lot of times, guys, they are stripped, and if they're not stripped, they're gonna be. So anytime they're kind of rounded off looking, I think you should replace those. But let's get both the top and bottom. Move back a little here. Get the top and the bottom loose. Yeah, see that one? Woo! We got lucky. The newer ones are like a 18mm, and I don't understand that. But anyway, we'll get these out, then we'll pry the brake caliper off the actual bracket. Now these are also your slide pins, so we'll pull those out. And I'm using just a pry bar to pry this apart. And then guys, oh, not what I wanted to do. Probably what I will do is I'm gonna compress this piston with these old brake pads. Because he's going to be putting I'm going to be putting new brakes on it here in a little bit, but he's going to want to paint these. He said he was going to paint them, so in order to paint them, in my opinion, it's just easier, we're not scraping up the paint when we're finished, to go ahead and compress them now. So I'll go grab the tool to do that, and I'm also going to take the cap off the reservoir up top to make my life a little easier. And like I said, I'm gonna use one of these pads, and look at the brake pads are almost shot. Normally I wouldn't do it this way, but since we're replacing all this stuff, it isn't gonna hurt anything. So all I'm doing here is putting the old pad in. We're using some C-channel vice grips. And like I said, I took the cap off the master up there to help. But we're gonna push this thing in. You can see how much easier it is now. I mean, you're not having to be as careful since he's going to be painting it. And then this will already be finished, you know. You get these back in. And then we'll move on to pulling off the caliper bracket itself. Now we need to get to the bracket bolts, which are 18s. And I probably should use my impact. Generally these are pretty snug because the factory generally puts Loctite. But like I said, guys, I think, if I remember correctly, I put brakes on this, or helped put brakes on this a long time ago. So we'll get the bracket out of the way. And your new brakes that I'll list below should come with new pieces of rubber, new hardware. I think what I'm gonna have him do is take these brackets home and paint them, and then we'll put it back together. We'll put it back together and he can paint the actual caliper itself on the truck. That way he can spray these, and that'd look a little nicer. It'd be a little bit easier on him than trying to reach around and do the rest. But now we can pull the rotor off and move on to the upper and lowers, tie rod, and the sway bar end link. Now on the tie rod here, I'm just using an 18. I'm just gonna knock it off really quick. It's got years of grime on it. I may have trouble getting it out of there, but anyway, let's hit. Normally I wouldn't do it like this. We can also pop the bottom since we're replacing those. Just want to loosen it up. And I probably should have done this before, but I'm going to loosen up the tie rod end here before we get real crazy getting that out of place. I really think this thing needs a steering rack, but there we go. I think we got it loose there. There we go. Just loosening that up so when I get this out, we can spin it off. We got that out of there. Let's go ahead and spin this thing off. You could see that it's leaking from the inner tie rod. It really, I don't know. We'll just talk to him, see what he wants to do. I really think it needs a rack. We'll set that to the side and move on to the sway bar end link. Now for the sway bar end link, I'm using a 13. And guys, I do have the other side apart already. So if you're wondering like if it moves a lot, that's why. You can push that up, pull this thing off of here. Like I said, I don't know whether he got a new one, but he's going to have to get a new one. These are shot. Look at the buildup of rust on the top of that. Surprised it didn't snap. Generally they snap. Also, while I'm down here, I'm gonna go ahead and use a 13 to take the bottom of the shock out. The bottom should be 13, the top should be 15 if it has the stock shock. So let's whip those out real quick. Should just be 2 bolts on the bottom here. And I'm using pretty thin wall because there's not a lot of room in here. these two guys here, and then we'll move up to the top and get this 15 off, and I'll probably use the impact for it too, just so we don't have to fight. Now, if you've got your inner fender on, probably won't be able to do it that way, but we do not. So that makes our life a little bit easier. Oh, don't make a liar out of me. There we go. Of course, it's spinning. So we're gonna lock something on the top. I'll use a ratcheting wrench to get this the rest of the way off. At least we got it loose. So this is the setup to get it the rest of the way. And probably if I would have put a little WD-40 on this, it would have made life easier, but just something to lock on the top so it doesn't spin while you use a ratcheting wrench to take it the rest of the way off. Then we'll have the shock out of the way. And it'll just pull straight down. Make sure you get all the rubber pieces, especially if you're reusing them, because there should be another rubber piece like this on the inside. This is what we should have. And you can see these shocks are actually in pretty good shape, but that's how it goes together once you get it apart. If that makes sense. It goes together after you get it apart. Okay, now we need to move on to loosening up the uppers and lowers. So here's the deal, guys. These should be 18 right here. I generally use a ratcheting wrench because they're not torqued down really hard. The bottom one, however, down here at the very bottom, this guy here, I use a 24. And that I use the impact on. So I also only have an impact in a 24 that's a shallow. I don't have a deep. And so I put it on there and then put my impact in it. But here's the other deal. We don't want to take these completely off, because what'll happen is this spring's under a pretty good amount of pressure in here. So this spring here, and if you do, it could potentially shoot out and hit you in the face, and that's not going to feel very good. So what we need to do is I'm going to go grab a jack and I'm going to set it underneath this bottom A-arm while I'm taking these loose. So I'll go grab the jack, put it under here, and then we'll cut back in and show you what I'm talking about. Hopefully you guys can see my jack placement there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab this 18 ratcheting wrench and we're going to attempt to loosen that up, and that's going the wrong way. Once we get it loose, then we'll go to the bottom and loosen it up. And I run it down to where there's just not very many threads showing. Same thing on the bottom one. You just don't want to take it completely off just yet. Now we got the 24 on the bottom. Now I threaded it all the way off, but now I'm going to thread it back on until the stud on the bottom is just flush. You don't have to use an impact on this. There's actually an insert. I want to say an 8mm or something on both of these if they start to spin on you. But now, the other side, guys, gave me a little bit of a fit in the fact that I normally just pop these a couple times with the hammer on both sides, and generally they pop out. But see, that one's out now. The bottom one on the other side is what gave me some fit. So I'm not gonna make you guys watch me hammer it, but what I will tell you is I went and borrowed a pickle fork, which I don't even own one. My neighbor had one. And the reason I don't like to use a pickle fork, let me go grab it real quick to show you what I'm talking about. But the reason I don't like to use these is they completely ruin the boot on the ball joint. But since we're replacing it, it's not as big a deal. So these guys here, they separate that joint. And I recommend that if you're not replacing the ball joints or the ball joint boots, which generally are clipped inside the ball joint, don't use one of those because they will absolutely tear the boot up. It's just, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I'm gonna hit on this for a while, see if we can just get it to separate the normal way. And if I can't, then I will show you guys me having the actual pickle fork in there. This one did fight me like the other side, so I did have to use that pickle fork, and it's still fighting me. Just one of those things that takes, sometimes when something's been together a while, you know, it'll give you fits. But got it in there. I think we're a couple hits away from getting it separated. Then we can go ahead, unscrew the rest of the way, let the spring down lightly. So we got it. You may have to kind of press up on this as you unscrew it. That one loose. Same thing here, we may lift up on this one. There we go. Get it out of the way. Probably clean it up a little bit off camera. And now, sorry, I guess I bumped the camera a little. We're gonna lightly let this down. That, like I said, that spring is under a lot of pressure. Now we should be good. Generally, guys, what I like to do is kind of stand back with my foot and press this down. And then I'll use a pry bar to pry our spring out. And there we have it. So, remember I said we were gonna cut on the springs. I don't know if I said that. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. It's my way of doing a cheap lowering job. I'm not cutting on a lot, guys. I'm going to take a die grinder or a cutoff wheel on my grinder, and I'm just gonna cut a half a hoop off. And like I said, I don't know if I said this because it's been a little bit since I started recording this. I want it to set a little bit of a rake to the front. And if we put the 2-inch drop shackles in the back, like we're going to, it's just not gonna set. It's gonna set almost level, and that's gonna make it look kind of weird, like it's dragging the ground. So I don't wanna do that. I don't wanna use the top hole and just do a 1-inch drop. I wanna get a 2-inch drop in the back. I really wanna get like a 1/2 inch in the front. So like I said, you can either cut on the bottom or the top. It really doesn't matter, guys. The spring's pretty much shaped the same. I'm gonna choose to cut off the top, and then we will reuse this. If you don't have this, it's a good idea to grab some rubber, because that keeps that spring from making noise when it moves around the pocket. Now it shouldn't move around a ton, but that's what that's for. So we'll go cut these. I'll show you what I cut off once I'm finished. I'm actually not gonna cut them right now. Let's just keep on moving with taking stuff apart, because we still got a few more things to go here. The next thing I think I'm gonna go ahead and take off is this bottom A-arm, because we are replacing that. And what we're gonna need is, we're gonna need an 18 on the inside and a 22 on the outside. I don't have a 22 deep, I don't believe, or maybe I do and I just can't find it right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna use my impact on one side and my ratchet on the other, and we're gonna get these out. Now guys, they are different sizes. You'll be able to see, obviously, but once you relieve pressure, this thing is going to fall down, and then we'll clean out that channel. But I'll show you that here in a minute. Let's whip these 2 bolts out, both the front and the rear. You can see what I'm talking about now that we have them loose, how far they move, how far that arm goes down. That's why I like to get it nice and high. There is a washer on that, guys. Make sure you get that. It needs to go back in. Take this other one out. You may have to wiggle it back and forth a little to get it loose. Now we got our old arm out of the way. Same situation, you can see the washer goes on the nut side. Now we got that out. Now, onto the upper. I'm trying to move the camera without getting grease and stuff all over it. But what we need to do, guys, is to try to get as close to the alignment as we have currently. There is a little pin here. Now this thing obviously has never been aligned. Let's go ahead and knock these out. This is a piece they put in from the factory after they align it, and obviously that's not gonna work. You can throw those in the trash. See, it only allows it to set in that one spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna mark this on both sides before I get this out of place. And the reason I do that is that gets us really close to where we need to be. Now it's still gonna need to be aligned when you take all this stuff off like this, but ultimately, you want to get it as close to possible because you're going to scrub off your tires The closest, where he's gonna get this aligned is the same place I use, and it's about 35-ish miles away, and that's just a lot of wear on those tires. So either way, I'm gonna mark that. I'll try to bring you guys in close and show you where I marked once I get it marked, and then we'll take this upper off and we'll have everything apart other than if he decides he wants to put a rack in it. Now you guys can see, hopefully you can see that white grease pen that I used to mark that. And I did that both in the front and the back. So now we can go ahead and take those out. I believe, if I remember right, they're 21 also, but they're 21 all the way through. And what you'll have to do is you're gonna have to loosen this up because this technically doesn't spin. You may have to hold it, but you need to take the nut off and then we'll push it out. Now that we've got those loose, we should be able to push these guys out, and we wanna keep them lined up the direction they came out. I like to put one on this side, same thing on the other. So I put the nut back on them because we don't want to get them, I mean, they'll fit on both sides, guys, so, but remember, we mark this, so we want to make sure we keep it in the same place. So I kind of put one closer to the front of the truck and one closer to the back of the truck. That ensures that we get it in there the correct way. But aside from that, one trick that I like to do when I'm pulling these things out is, I mean, they'll come straight out, but I like to kind of bend them a little. And the reason I say that, guys, is because these things smash in when you're putting them in. So if you don't kind of, you know, pry them out a little bit like this, you're gonna have a terrible time getting your other ones in place. And I'm not talking about a major amount here. Just pry them out just a little bit. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back in here and clean up this pocket really well. Make sure we get all the junk out of there. And then we'll grease up our new ones and probably go ahead and put those in place, to be honest with you. And I like to use a metal scraper to scrape any extra junk out of there. Just some old grease over the years. And then I'll go back in with some brake clean and get a nice clean area for our new arms to mount to. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people don't do this, but guys, I think it's a good idea. And I think a lot of people probably don't use any kind of grease or anything because it is metal touching metal. But look, anywhere you can clean stuff up and have a good connection, because honestly, your torque specs aren't gonna be great if you're tightening up against old grease that kind of mushes around, if that makes sense. And I'm gonna have to switch over to microfiber. These guys just don't do a real great job of cleaning up without falling apart. Look how bad that is. If you guys are wondering, like when I get them this dirty too, I just throw these away. So let's go grab our new arm and at least get one thing in place. Because I just got off the phone with my dad and talking to him about ordering a new rack. And it would be nice if we could just do it all at once, because I mean, he's gonna have to have an alignment before and after. So might as well put it in now and he can just get one alignment. So we've got our new arm, and guys, these are not side specific. They actually fit both sides, but it should come with a grease fitting, a grease zerk, and the new arm itself. So what you need to know here are that it comes with, here I am banging it up, obviously a new ball joint, new nut. It comes with a cotter key, which the factory did not have. We need to go ahead and screw that grease fitting in the top, which I'll do off camera here. And then I'm gonna put, I gotta quit hitting that. I'm gonna put a little bit of grease here and on the inside, and then we're gonna go ahead and put it in place and get our bolts at least loosely started. We are not going to tighten them up right now. We're gonna wait until we get the rest of it together. We're gonna lift up on that very bottom A-arm again and tighten it up with weight on it. Because if you guys notice, these things set like almost straight, and then when you relieve the pressure, they drop down. So you want to make sure that you don't tighten them up in the down position, otherwise they're going to squeak and wear out quicker. You can see I've got grease on both sides. So now, remember I said you need to bend those out. Look how hard this thing is to get in place. It doesn't want to go sometimes. You gotta fight it. Sometimes you need to bend it a little bit more. All right, I think we got it started. Now we'll grab our factory bolts. Unless yours is, if they're seized up, guys, don't reuse them. Got our back one to go in the back, front one to go in the front. And then, like I said, we'll just get them loosely fitted in there. I'll bring you guys in closer here in a minute and show you kind of what it looks like. You may need, I'm gonna go grab a rubber mallet actually, kind of help tap these things around. I wanna show you what it looks like. Got it all in. I tried to clean up the excess grease. You can see I do have my lines lined up, but guys, it really doesn't matter at this point. You can see that we have free movement up and down, which is what we want. You can snug them up, and I don't even know how snug I get them. I just get them finger tight because we want it to move around. So that one's in. The only thing I want to do is I want to use a pick, and you'll probably have to use a pick to transfer. I'm going to get the 10 millimeter that holds the brake line here out of our old A-arm. Remember, I screwed it back in there. But on this side, there is a plastic clip, and a lot of times it's easy to break. If you push it from the back side as you're prying from the front with my release tools here, this guy here, a lot of times you can get it out without breaking it. If you don't get it out without breaking it, it's not a big deal. You can run a zip tie through there. It just doesn't look as nice in my opinion. So we'll try to get those out. And then I guess, guys, I'm gonna clean out the pockets on the bottom, similar to what I did up top here, and we can go grab the bottom A-arm and get it in place. At this point, I've got both those channels cleaned out. So, and I got the grease fitting in the top here, the grease zerk. And so now I'm gonna put a little bit of grease on these. That, like I said, it's not a requirement, guys. I just always do. Put a little bit of grease on this, on both sides. We're gonna put it in place with the original bolts. Remember, the bolts both come in from the front. So the bolt head will be closest to the front, the nut will be on the back. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these in. Not gonna tighten them up, just threading them up by hand, and then we'll move on. I guess one thing I should have mentioned, guys, is these are side specific. Of course, make sure your ball joint is facing down and you're matching it up with the side that goes with the correct side. But I think I've talked my dad into ordering a steering rack. So at that point, we're pretty much through here because I've cut the springs. I told you guys I was gonna cut a half a hoop off the top. You can see I did that. Like I said, I just used a cutoff wheel on my grinder, knocked it off. They're out hanging. I painted them, I just resprayed them with some black so they look a little nicer. So until I get the steering rack, I really have no reason to go back together right now because you could see that it comes through here, and I think, honestly, I probably shouldn't even put the lower A-arm on because it'll make it a little easier, but I can still thread it out. But either way, I think at this point we're gonna move to the back. I wanna get the brakes off so he can paint the calipers and whatnot. And we still have some, you know, we got to put those drop shackles in the back too. So let's move to the back and see what we can get accomplished back there.